also have the long blocks like Joey does. We have 84 minutes a day with our classes. So that's a little different. So you already know this, sorry. I'm presenting this at the Undergraduate Research Symposium, so I'm kind of practicing using my PowerPoint that I will be using there. So bear with me, because I don't need to tell you guys that this is action research and what that is, because you know that. Okay. In my literature review, I basically found that accountability groups and goal setting, so looking at goal setting, so if students use set mastery goals, like I want to understand this topic, or if they set performance goals, I want to get an A on the test. So I looked at the differences in those goals they set and how that impacts like whether they can reach it and what kind of students are setting those goals. So in my lit review, I basically found that the importance is a learning environment and a sense of collaboration and respect in the classroom, especially if you want students to set mastery goals. Which I was lucky enough to come into a classroom that was very collaboration and respectful, like was oriented towards that already. So I didn't have to do a lot of work with that. And that helped a lot because that part was already done. So basically what I was trying to find out is, does accountability help students reach their goals in a mathematics classroom? So what I did is I had my students fill out a survey on Google Forms where they listed their name, what class they were in, because I did this in all 3 of my classes. And then they could list one person they would want to work with, and it specified that they needed to be somebody they were comfortable sharing their goals with, and then one person they would not want to work with. Because they're middle schoolers, so if Sarah steals Susie's boyfriend and you put them in a group together, nothing's going to get done because they hate each other right now. It's the result. So I did that to make sure that my goals would be productive so that they were actually working towards this. So I ended up only analyzing the information for my first class, which is 23 students, because my other groups didn't get it done quite as quick as we needed to. But they started with that pre-survey, and based on that, I put my students into 6 groups of about 4 students. So every day, we would go to lab on Tuesday or Thursdays, the computer lab, and they would fill out these lovely Google Forms, which they grew to love and hate at the same time. So they just sit in their group, and on Tuesdays, they would set their goals. They would ask for their name, class, what group they were in, and it was, what is your mathematics goal for the week? What advice did your group members give you to help you reach that goal? And then on Thursdays, they would self-assess on that, so name, all that stuff. And then they had to rank on a scale from 1 to 5 how they felt they were doing towards reaching that goal. So a 5 was, I almost am at my goal, and a 1 was, I am nowhere near it, anywhere in between. So we would do that every Thursday. And basically, what I found is that my students had they started out with more performance goals. I had 15 performance goals, 4 mastery goals, 1 goal that was a performance/mastery goal, because they put, I want to understand the concept and get an A on the test. So it was like, well, can't put that in one category. And then I'd have goals like, my goal is to be at school today, or not be absent this week. I'm like, okay, well, doesn't really deal with math, so I added a no classification category. So I had 2 of those that week, so we were getting into it. And as I went on, I actually had more of the mastery or performance/mastery goals, except for the last week, which what I think happened there is we had this big project that my 8th grade students procrastinated on, and they were all trying to get that done. So that week, all their goals were, my goal is to get my project done and get at least a B, because they had put this off and I moved the deadline back twice. So that's what I think happened there. That was fun. But then I looked at their self-assessment findings, which was where it got really interesting. So in the first week, the average self-assessment was a 3.9, and the standard deviation was a 1.18, in case you really care. Week 2, it went up to a 4.5, so on average, students rated themselves at a 4.5 on reaching their goals, so that improved. And the standard deviation was a 0.62, so we're going the right direction. Week 3, we dropped back to a 4 on our average self-assessment, and our standard deviation was a 0.94. And then week 4, we're at a 4.16, and our standard deviation was a 0.83. But where I really found it got interesting, which is something I was not looking for, was when I put my students in their groups, it kind of worked out. So some groups were my students who tend to be above average. We had my groups with my below average students and my average students. So I ended up going through and looking at their average self-reflection goals and how they felt they were meeting it, which told me a lot. My first group was all above average students, easily got A's in every class. Their self-assessment rating was a 5, standard deviation of 0. They all said they were reaching, I can't talk, their goal every day. It's been a long day, wait till you're teaching all day with extended hours. My group 2 was average students, and their average was a 4.09. Group 3 was another above average group that was 4.8. Group 4 was a below average group, and they were at a 3.17. Group 5 was also a below average group, and they were 3.62. And Group 6 was an average group, and they were at a 4.2. So basically, what I found out from all of this, along with their responses, because they did a feedback reflection survey at the end, was that this really didn't do anything for my above average students, because they were already self-regulated learners who were already setting goals for themselves. They would give me feedback like, I already do this, I don't understand why I have to write it down. So there was that. But for my average students, it helped a lot. There were great improvements in the kinds of goals they were setting and how they felt they were reaching it. I got super positive feedback, like my group helped me do my homework, so I got my homework done. So for them, it was very beneficial. And then for my below average students, it kind of went either way. So overall, I'd say that they were beneficial, and I learned a lot about my students in their reflections and what they would say. Like I had a girl write about how she needed to do her homework, and that would help her reach her goal of not failing the class. So it told me that she's not just ignoring us when we tell her she has to turn in her homework. And she actually started doing that with her group pushing her. So overall, I'd say they were pretty beneficial. Any questions? Right.
How much did you help them set their goal? Did you give them examples? Did you just say make a goal?
We did like a practice week, which I didn't include, which was just a chapter goal, and I kind of did a little bit of both. Like I said, just set a goal, and then they were freaking out. So then I gave them like some examples of goals, like you want to understand this and explain it to your friend. You want to be able to pass the class, like whatever their goal was, because for some students that's a legit goal. So does that answer your question?
Did they know what they were gonna, like, did you introduce what they were gonna learn next, so they knew what kind of goals to set?
Yep. And that was one thing that was kind of difficult too, was that our lab days are Tuesday, Thursday, so they really had like a day and a half to work on it. So ideally it would have been better to do it a Monday, Friday, but that's when I had lab. And then you had all the snow days in there, so when you have a snow day on a Wednesday, you can't really evaluate it on Thursday.
You've got 45 seconds.
Great.
According to that.
Josh?
So I know that you and I both use Google Forms, but do you think that was a good way to collect data for next year's?
Yes, I did. It was so organized, and I just copy and pasted it into Excel and organized it by whatever I wanted to. And I just did it with my website. I had to create an ed tech, so my students were pros at Googling Miss Russell's math. Good way to teach them how to spell your last name. Fun fact.